Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome to the first launch webinar of the AI Weather Quest. Very happy to have you all on board of this competition by ECMWF to enhance subseasonal predictions with AI ML. So I will get you through this webinar today. I will first start with presenting myself. I'm Olga Loegel. I'm a user outreach and engagement associate at ECMWF, and I'm leading the organization of the Weather Quest. Within today's webinar, we want to give you an overview of this new competition, provide you with some information on its background, also deep dive a bit into the guidelines of the competition, and finally present to you the various engagement tools that we put in place for you to discuss with us, but also discuss with the fellow competitors. So without further ado, I will start with the exact agenda of today. So as I said, we will start with a few presentations. It will go on for about 25 minutes. You will be introduced to the quest. You will be introduced to subseasonal predictions and how to leverage AI ML for subseasonal predictions. We will also present you with the rules, the evaluation, and the resources of the competition, and finally with the engagement tools. Then we will keep the rest of the hour for the Q&A. So we are hoping for about 30 minutes of question and answers, during which you can simply write your question to the chat, or you can also raise your digital hand and we will call you to take the floor and ask your question. I have to remind you that this session is being recorded. So the recording will be made available online after the webinar. Of course, if you do not wish to be on the recording, please make sure to turn off your camera. And also please make sure that during the presentations, so during the first 25 minutes of the webinar, your microphone is muted. But of course, then if you want to talk during the question and answers, you are very welcome to take the floor. And before we start, we also want to say a very special thanks to the advisory board and its members for supporting us with the conception of the competition. And of course, you can find more information about the advisory board, the terms of reference, the members, etc., on the website directly in the About section, About page of the website. So I will start now with introducing you to the AI Weather Quest. So what is the AI Weather Quest? It's an international competition organized by ECMWF and endorsed by WMO. And this competition is for the best performing AI ML models for subseasonal weather predictions. So our goals with this competition is to stay on top of the latest AI ML models for subseasonal predictions, to also create a fair, transparent, standardized approach for benchmarking AI ML models, and to bring together the AI ML community and the methodology community. This competition is really for anyone who can leverage AI ML to improve weather predictions. So you don't have necessarily to have a methodology background to get into the competition. You just have to be willing to use AI ML for weather predictions. By doing so, you will be able to eventually gain global recognition for your work, also increase your knowledge about AI ML-based weather forecasting, and finally make connections with your peers that are interested also in the subject and notably expert at ECMWF. The competition is divided into two main phases, and these phases are themselves divided into sub-periods that are each of 13 weeks. So we are starting today with the initial training phase that will last until mid of August. And the goal of the initial training phase is really to give you time to be ready to be competitive. So to give you time to develop your AI models, to refine them. Also during the testing GGA period, so June, July, August period, you will be able to actually submit your forecast and to self-evaluate them in a non-competitive environment. So during the testing GGA period, there will be no announcement of winners. There will be no rankings on the website, no results, but you will be able to test all the tools of the competition. And then during the competition phase, you will submit weekly real-time forecast of as many periods as you choose. So that means you can enter the competition phase for the sun period, and leave the competition phase for the DGF period, enter again for the MAM period, etc. you can really choose how long you want to take part in the competition and when you want to enter. So that's for the introduction to the quest. Now I will leave the floor to Frédéric Vitart to present us with the background of the competition.
Hello everyone, so my name is Frédéric Vitart. I work at ECMWF in the research department where I lead the team on sub-zero prediction. So my role in this competition is to oversee its scientific content. So this competition focuses on sub-zero prediction, which covers a time range beyond 2 weeks, but less than a season. So that's a particularly interesting time range because it fills a gap between weather between weather and the climate forecasting. And it's a particularly important time range for many applications like agriculture, energy. The predictability at this time range comes from the atmospheric initial conditions, like as in weather forecasting, but also from the slow varying atmospheric boundary condition, the ocean, land, sea ice, as in seasonal forecasting. However, this time range is considered sometimes too long for the atmosphere to still retain much of the memory of its initial condition, and too short for the boundary condition to evolve enough to bring predictability beyond simple persistence. So this makes the prediction at this time range a particularly challenging task. So next slide, please, Olga. So currently, operational sub-zero forecasts are produced using diametral models in a way very similar to what we do for weather forecasting. So sub-zero forecasting system consists of 3 parts. The first part is initialization, where we collect as many observations as possible. And then we use a data assimilation system to convert those observations into initial conditions for the model. The second part is a forward integration, where then we run the model at ECMWF for 46 days. So we run the model multiple times because due to the chaotic nature of the atmosphere, the forecasts at this time range have to be probabilistic, not deterministic. And at ECMWF, we run the model 100 times. So this allows us to sample uncertainty in the initial conditions, but also in the model formulation. The third part is the forecast calibration, because at this time range, the model tends to drift towards its own climatology, which can be quite different from the observed climate. We cannot produce forecasts directly from the model outputs. We need to calibrate the forecast. So over the recent years, there's been a revolution in the weather forecasting with AI methods. Those methods can be used in many ways to improve weather forecasting. They can be used in an initialization phase to improve the treatment of observations, but also to improve the data assimilation. They can be used in the forward integration part by improving the model physics parameterization. And they can be used also to improve the calibration and downscaling of the model, and also sometimes the multimodal ensemble generation. But AI methods can be also used as a replacement of the full system or part of the system, depending if it's initialized, trained from observation or reanalysis. And some of those methods which have been developed recently, so some of those data-driven methods which have been developed recently can outperform the state-of-the-art weather forecasting system, at least for some variables. So the question we want to answer in this weather quest are the following. Can data-driven methods be a substitute to dynamical models for sub-zero prediction? And the second question is, can AI method produce better calibration multimodal combination? This second question was actually the main focus of competitions that was organized by the WMO a few years ago. Next slide, please. So at this time range, there is very little predictability in the change of weather from one day to another. However, it has been demonstrated that if we use long time averages or spatial averages, we can increase the forecasted horizon. So it is typical for sub-zero prediction to use weekly averages. And the graphic here shows an example of charts which is produced at ECMWF. So it shows the probability of weekly mean 2-meter temperature to be in the upper quintile. So the red colors indicate regions where there is a high probability to be much warmer than normal. And the blue colors indicate regions where there is a high probability to be low probability to be much warmer than normal. So this type of forecast is very similar to the forecast we will ask the participant to produce. We are asking for quintile probabilities of 2-meter temperature, mean sea level pressure, and precipitation. So the way we compute those quintiles is explained on the right side. So for each grid point, a first stage consists in computing the quintile boundaries. And we don't compute those quintile boundaries from reanalysis because, as I mentioned earlier, the model drifts towards its own climate. So we compute those boundaries from the model climate, which we estimate from historical reforecast. So at ECMWF, we run a 20 years set of reforecast, which help us then to produce this model climate and help us then to define what is a 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80% distribution in this model climate. And then the second stage consists in counting how many members of the ensemble real-time forecast fall into each category. And from that, we can define what is the probability of each quintile. So I will leave the floor now to Joshua Talib, who will go more into details with the technical implementation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Frédéric. Next slide, please, Olga. Brilliant. Thanks, Olga. So as Frédéric says, as a competition, we are asking for global probabilistic quintile forecasts at a 1.5 latitude and longitude resolution of 3 variables. These variables include near surface temperature, mean sea level pressure, as well as weekly accumulated precipitation. So for near surface temperature and mean sea level pressure, we're asking for quintile probabilities that are computed on weekly averages, whilst for precipitation, we're requesting that weekly accumulations are predicted. We're asking for forecasts to be issued at a lead time of 19 to 25 days and 26 to 32 days. And in the next couple of slides, I'll show you the forecast submission schedule, and you'll see that these forecast lead times correspond to a Monday to Sunday averaging or summing, depending on the variable of choice. Now, each team for the competition can submit a set of forecasts from 3 different AI machine learning models. What this means is you may have a set of AI machine learning models and you want to submit forecasts from all 3 different types. So as a set of organisers, we've decided that you are able to submit forecasts from different models as a single team. In addition to this, so you can imagine that if you have 3 different models, and as a competition, we're asking for 3 variables at 2 lead times, a team can therefore submit up to a maximum of 18 forecasts. So what I mean by forecast is each of the different variables at each of the lead times from each of the different models. To clarify as well, you may also choose to just submit a single forecast at a single lead time. So you may be, as an individual or as a team, really want to submit a forecast for near surface temperatures at a lead time of days 19 to 25. And as a competition, you're perfectly capable of just submitting for a single variable at a single lead time. Just to note, if you do plan to participate in the competition, you must register to the AI Weather Quest online. When we receive your submission, we do a check on the team name and model name that you're associating with that forecast submission, and we just make sure that these are all aligned so that we understand who is submitting what forecast. Moving on to forecast evaluation, for all 3 variables, we are evaluating forecasts against ERA5T. So this is the reanalysis that comes out of ECMWF with a latency of 5 days. ERA5T is very similar to ERA5, which is published with a 3-month latency. However, to ensure that we can perform real-time evaluation, we will continue with the ERA5T product. Just to clarify, and this is all highlighted on our AI WeatherQuest website, for near surface temperature and mean sea level pressure, we'll be evaluating forecasts against 6 hourly output from ERA 5T, whilst for precipitation, we'll be using hourly output to produce weekly accumulations. So if you imagine we have the forecast and then the observations are received from the forecasting period, and then online we'll publish weekly leaderboards. Now these leaderboards will display the ranked probability skill scores associated with each forecast of each variable at each lead time. And in addition, we'll work out the average rank probability skill score for each lead time, which combines all the rank probability skill scores for the 3 different variables. In addition to this, for each competitive period that Olga introduced earlier, we'll be working out the average rank probability skill scores across the full 13-week period. So if you imagine you're in week 11 of a competitive period, we'll calculate what the average rank probability skill score is from weeks 1 to 11 so that we can see the progression in forecast accuracy as the competitive period continues. At the end of each competitive phase, we will announce the competition winners, so at the end of a 13-week period, and this will be determined by the highest average ranked probability skill score when combining the 3 variables, and we will have a separate winner for each lead time. In addition, as I said, you may choose to only forecast 1 variable at 1 lead time, and that's absolutely fine. And we will celebrate those exceptional models that do particularly well at forecasting 1 variable at a certain lead time. In addition, for those who have registered for the competition, you will notice that we receive quite a lot of information regarding the team and the computational infrastructure that's available to you. What we want to do as a competition is we want to highlight exceptional models that come from teams that are less experienced in developing AI machine learning forecasts, but also celebrate those that come from relatively low standards of computational infrastructure compared to other teams. Just one thing to highlight, we have decided as a competition that to be ranked as a competitive winner, you must submit a forecast every week within the 13-week period. So if you can imagine, if we had a certain hot spell and it turns out that your model wasn't particularly good during that hot spell in a 13-week period, it would be unfair if you didn't submit a forecast during that period, because obviously we want to make sure that we treat everyone exactly the same. In addition to this, between 4 to 5 weeks before the end of the competitive period finishes, we will be publishing on the registration form a questionnaire for you to provide an overview of your model. This will solely ask what data sets did you use, what is the foundations computational infrastructure of your model, and we expect these questionnaires to be completed for us to announce you as a competitive winner so that we can understand essentially the model infrastructure that you've developed. Next slide, please, Olga. So just having a look at the forecast submission window. So the schematic on the screen is available on our website. And essentially, we ask that all forecasts are initialized on a Thursday. This is to be in line with the dynamical subseasonal models that we currently collate here at ECMWF. So imagine you've got your forecast, maybe it's of near surface temperatures, of weekly means between days, of weekly mean temperatures between days 19 to 25. And you have this forecast on the Thursday, what do you do? So essentially we've developed an AI WeatherQuest Python package where you can download essentially a NetCDF template. You can then input your forecasted probabilities, and then you can send us that NetCDF file of forecasted probabilities back to ECMWF using the AI WeatherQuest Python package. Online, you'll find all the details that you need for step-by-step guidance to submitting your own forecast, including a read the docs documentation. However, as Olga will say later, there's also going to be a testing webinar for us to go through the guidance and the tools in step-by-step detail. You'll also notice in the schematic that we have opened the forecast submission window across 4 days, so between Thursday and Sunday of what we've called week 0. We've done this because we wanted to make sure that participants feel capable of submitting forecasts, even if they're under a limited time window. So we've opened the forecast submission window to 4 days. However, we request that you only use information from before the Thursday initialization date. So you can imagine that you choose to access ECMWF open data to initialize your model, and it may take time for you to download that information. That's absolutely fine. We just ask that you only use information before the Thursday start date. Another interesting cool tool that we're planning to develop as part of the AI Weather Quest is we're hoping on day 5 to essentially show all of the forecasted probabilities through an ECMWF style forecasting tool. So for many of you who may be aware of the forecast products that are produced at ECMWF, we essentially want to show the near surface temperature, mean sea level pressure, and the precipitation weekly characteristics in real time, and possibly engage with users on how they engage with these predictions that come out from the AI and machine learning models. Next slide, please, Olga. And then we've submitted our forecasts. We then experience week 3 and week 4, and then what happens in week 5 when we start to evaluate the forecasts. So once the 2 forecasting windows have passed, we will evaluate all 3 variables against error 5t. By day 37, we will publish the latest ranked probability skill scores online, and these will be viewable to the public. However, we should say that if you've registered for the AI Weather Quest, then you had the option to remain anonymous, and therefore all that will appear is your team name and model name along with the score itself. There will be no association of who you are or what your affiliation with is if you ticked anonymous. What's also really cool is through the AI Weather Quest Python package, you will be able to evaluate the forecast yourself by downloading post-processed observations that are available through the AI Weather Quest package. So the way that you can do this is use the forecast evaluation tool in the Python package itself. You can retrieve the historical quintile boundaries that Frédéric mentioned earlier, as well as the error 5t observations, and you can perform your own self-assessment and compute your own ranked probability skill score. Just to note, there was in the previous webinar, there were questions about how we compute the historical quintiles that we'll be comparing the forecasts against. And essentially this comes from the previous 20 years of error 5 data, but we also, to increase our number of samples that we take, we also shift our weekly period by -4, -2, 2 and 4 days. So in total, we have 100 weeks sampled. Next slide, please, Olga. In addition, we've also used the AI Weather Quest Python package to host some possible post-processed error 5 training data that you may want to use. So in this data set, you have access to weekly means, error 5 near surface temperature and mean sea level pressure, in addition to error 5 weekly accumulated precipitation. Whilst we provide these post-processed products as a competition, you are free to use any observational or forecast data set to train your own AI machine learning model. For example, you may choose to leverage potential data sources from ECMWF's open data catalog, which currently stores the most recent initial atmospheric data, or you may choose to bias correct dynamical subseasonal forecast data that's available on a public data portal and hosted by ECMWF itself. Just to highlight, what are we not supporting? So unfortunately, we don't have the manpower behind us to support individual requests for data retrieval and model development support. As you can imagine, you'll all come up with different models and you'll all request different variables. And we're hoping that you guys can leverage tools that are already available from ECMWF to access these different data sets. In addition, we are unable to provide high performance computing resource, but we are able to support possibly candidates and participants from European countries to leverage European initiatives. And finally, as I said, we're planning to host these quintile probabilities online. And just to highlight from a forecast user perspective, we're unable to, I guess, change or alter some of the quintile probabilities to develop bespoke subseasonal forecast products. However, I've seen prototypes of the forecast portal, and it should prove useful for forecast users. So just quickly, from a scientific point of view, what am I really excited about? You know, this project will aim to benchmark the latest advancements in AI machine learning forecasts on sub-season forecasts. We also hope to unite a community that are leading experts in developing future forecast development. And then finally, as I said, through the forecast portal, we're hoping to share the latest developments in machine learning AI sub-season forecasts to a diverse range of users. Thank you for taking part. Back to you, Olga.
Yes, okay, let's hand the presentation round with the engagement channels that we put in place. First of all, and maybe the most important, the dedicated AI web request form. So you can directly access it through the website, and it will be used for announcements from us, the organization team. For example, you can see that Joshua already posted a conversation about 2 weeks ago on the evaluation system update. It can be used for general inquiries from you guys. So if you have any questions that you think can also be of interest to other teams, don't hesitate to post there and we will directly respond. It can be used for discussions as well. What are your challenges? Do you want to share anything with other teams? Do you want to find teammates? We had, for example, one individual who posted on the forum this morning asking to merge efforts basically with other individuals to really create a more interesting team. So don't hesitate to just go on the forum, answer questions there, discuss, ask us questions, etc. Then we have the contact form, also accessible through the website. This is for individual matters, so questions that are only of concern to your team, and you can directly reach out to us with it. And finally, you have the newsletter with news articles, or as Joshua, you like to put it, it's a very good tool if you also want to stay updated about the quest, but not partake. So we will send newsletter probably once every trimester also. All of this forum, contact form, newsletter, you can find the links to on the website at the end of each web page. So at the end of each web page, you will have a banner dedicated to each of this to subscribe to the newsletter, send us a contact form, or join the forum. And then finally, and that's also the conversation we are having today, we will have regular webinars throughout the competition with the goal for us to present you the next steps in the competition, for you to ask your question, and also eventually to spotlight your results. So during the initial training phase, in addition to the webinar we are having now, we will have the testing period launch webinar on the 2nd of May. So I will put directly the registration links in the chat as I finish presenting this slide. So don't hesitate to already register, and we will probably have the links up on the website as soon as tomorrow as well. So during this testing period launch webinar, the goal will be to dive more into the technical details about how to use the AI web request Python to submit your forecast, to self-evaluate your forecast, etc. Then we will have the testing period insights webinar at the end of the testing June, July, August period for you to give us feedback regarding the testing period, and also for us to present you how the competition will change to a competitive environment, how we will display your results in the competition phase, etc. And then at the end of each competitive period, we will have an awards webinar. And the goal of this is really for you to gain recognition for your work within the competition. So we will really spotlight the best teams, best models, etc. So now I will share with you already in the chat the registration for the next webinar. Don't hesitate to register as soon as this webinar is ending. And I think we can already go to the question and answers. So a reminder on the question and answers, don't hesitate to just raise your digital hand if you want to take the floor. Else, I will also go through the chat. If anyone is asking questions in the chat, we will read and answer to them out loud. So we had a first question from Arsharya, but that was answered. So you were asking, can a team submit one model instead of 3 models? So indeed, just to make sure that everybody understood, it's up to 3 models that each team can submit models with, submit forecasts with, but you can use only 1 model, 2 models, etc. You can also register using only 1 model and add models to your team as you go on within the competition. Then we had a question from Harry Laos, why ERA 5T is needed if probabilistic forecast quintiles is against model climate, as Frédéric Vitart said. So I think that's more a question for either Frédéric or Joshua. Why ERA5T is needed if probabilistic forecast quintiles is against model climate?
So we use a set of reforecasts to work out what the model climate is, and then we compare that, and then we compare the forecast to that model climate. However, we then use observations to see whether the quintile boundary that the forecast sits in is the same as what we see in observations. And in this case, the observations we're using ERA5T. So I've provided a bit of text replying to that question in more detail.
We also had participants asking if the slides will be made available, same for the recording. So indeed, within next week, by next week probably, we will have both the recording of both sessions from today and the slide be made available on the resources pages on the website. Nashikita, I see that you have raised your hand if you want to ask your question.
Hi, hi Frédéric. So it's Nochi, we are from Spire. So I have two questions. One, is it mandatory to submit the code at the end of the competition? So that's my first question. And the second question is, sometime to run a kind of AI foundational model for S2S in a climatology or making a reforecast is very expensive. In that case, can we use the ERA5T or ERA5 to create the quantile for the forecasting threshold?
I can answer this. First question, no, we will not require any code from yourself. Second question, yeah, we understand it's expensive to run reforecasts, and you are very welcome to use ERA5 or quintile boundaries that are computed using ERA5. And just to say, we have actually computed these for the past 20 years. So obviously, for forecast evaluation, we ourselves need to know what the quintile boundaries are. And these are available through the AI Weather Quest for the past 20 years. So you can use these to support your model development.
So is it available in that Python package you mentioned?
It is available through the Python package. Yeah, I can drop a link. Yeah, no, thank you for the question.
Thanks.
Okay, then we had Naveen, who was highlighting that you, Joshua, you were saying you are willing to accept forecast of one of the proposed variables if all the three are not available or developed, and is asking, do you also plan to accept regional forecast over Europe instead of global, for example?
Unfortunately, so to clarify, yes, we will accept forecasts of just a single variable. However, unfortunately, we won't accept just forecasts that focus on a certain region. As you can imagine, if you choose specific regions, this competition then gets extremely big as you multiply the multiple regions that we are forecasting plus the variables plus the lead times. So we decided as a competition to focus on global forecasts for a certain set of variables. However, I would argue that whilst we ask for global forecasts, hopefully using the forecasting portal tool, we can focus on certain case studies and how well they were forecasted by AI machine learning models. So I suspect we may experience a few heat waves over the next year or two, and it will be interesting to see which AI machine learning models were doing best at forecasting those types of case studies. Thanks for the question.
Then Bertrand, will AIFS CRPS output be available in real time and allowed to be used?
I'm going to hand over to Frédéric for this one, as he is involved in those conversations more.
That's a good question. AIFS CRPS will become operational soon. I mean, in June. I don't know, sorry, if it will be publicly available. The output will be available. The charts will be on the website. So I pass on this one, but yeah, I mean that's a question we need to address.
We had Goktug. Will you reward the models that use fewer computational resources?
We'll highlight them. So we'll essentially look at the computational resources that's been used for the different models that are developed. And if they are doing a good job, but they use a lot less computational resource, We'll 100% highlight them because that's really useful information to know. Okay, yeah, go for it, Olga.
Yes, and Harry Laos was asking, why did you choose 1.5 degrees resolution for the competition?
Good question. We originally actually chose 1 degree, but we actually changed to 1.5 degree because at the moment there is a WMO comparison project that compares subseason forecasts that come from dynamical models, and therefore to enable us to compare the latest dynamical forecasts with what we receive from machine learning AI models, we needed them at the same resolution.
And Dell was saying that he gathered the teams could plan to download data from the ECMWF Open Data Catalog for the 0-hour UTC first day of each forecast period and launch the AI model from that, and maybe other data sources from 0-hour UTC or earlier.
That sounds perfect.
Comments?
Yeah, that sounds great. That's exactly what we want you to do, Dale.
Hamza, do you have an exact evaluation metric like RMCE, MAE, or some weighted metric?
Yeah, maybe I didn't go into enough detail. Olga, if you just click the next slide.
Yes. It will be
here. Or the next one after that. Yeah, so we're so essentially every week we'll be computing the ranked probability skill score. So what this does is it works out what the ranked probability score is for each forecast compared to the observation, as well as what the ranked probability score would be if you were to just use climatology. So in this case, climatology would be forecast probabilities of 20%. So if you imagine for each week, we work out the ranked probability skill score by doing 1 minus the division of the ranked probability score divided by the ranked probability score if you use climatology. In addition, I mentioned that we're going to be working out the average ranked probability skill score throughout the competitive period. And this is done through working out the ranked probability score for each forecast at each grid point, and we average the comparison between the forecast provided and what would happen if we use climatology to work out what the average ranked probability skill score is. So that's the exact evaluation metric that we're using. I should note that obviously at the end of this competition, when we try and collate the community together and we think about potential publications, we'll obviously use different evaluation metrics. As well as this, I know I mentioned ERA5T as our evaluation product. However, we're likely to use other evaluation products in the background. But at the moment, where the key evaluation metric is ranked probability skill scores using ERA5T.
Yeah, and Harry Laos, you were asking, indeed it is confirmed that you can use any historical data sets for the training of a analysis, climate simulations, not from necessarily from ECMWF. The only thing is that you have to make sure that the licenses of this data sets allowed for such use, but you can use really any data sets for training. Did we have any other question? That would be the most updated IC allowed to be used, isn't it?
Correct. Yes. Yes, please only use the Thursday 0 initialization. I mean, technically, you could use the Sunday initialization and your scores may be pretty, good. But I think we'll come to realize that, you're using data that's after that Thursday start date. And as a community, we want to make sure that we're making the best predictions. So we're trying to open the forecast window to enable multiple partners to get involved, even those who don't have, a large resource of computational infrastructure available to them. Hence why we're opening up the forecast window.
Nashiketa is asking for confirmation. So the real-time forecast will be using the 0-hour UTC cycle of ERA5, right? Can other real-time DA analysis could be used for real-time?
As long as that DA analysis real-time is before Thursday 0 UTC, you are very welcome to use other real-time analysis products.
Do we have any other questions? You can also just raise your hand if you wish to to talk. If additional questions also come to you after the meeting, we said do not hesitate to use the forum if you think they are of interest to all the teams, or to use directly the contact us form if there are questions that are personal to your team. Is there a deadline to register to the competition? So no, there's no deadline for registration. As we said, the timeline of the competition itself is very flexible for the teams. You can actually register and partake into one period, but not necessarily all of them, or into how many periods you choose to partake in. So really, the registration will always continuously remain open, and you can register at any time for any period. The only thing that you need to be aware of is, as Joshua said, if you partake in a period, you need to submit forecast for every week of that set period. Are there any restrictions to using proprietary observations? So Joshua, I think this question was for you, but I can also take it. I think really, as we said, you can use any data sets for training, so it can be also proprietary.
However, I guess we just highlight again that make sure that as an organization or as an individual, you have the license and permission to use that data set.
Yeah. Bertrand is asking if multi-model ensemble are allowed.
You are very welcome to use a multi-model ensemble to produce your quintile probabilities. However, as a competition, we're just accepting the submission of a single 2D grid that contains the probabilities for each quintile boundary, like the schematic that Frédéric showed earlier.
And then we had John asking for, can someone be part of more than one team? How big can teams be? So I think we said, and I think also it's written in the terms and conditions, that someone can only be part of one team, and the team can be from 1 up to 10 participants. That being said, an organization can, of course, have several teams with different participants. But yes, for one person, one team, basically. And of course, individuals, as the team can be one person, individuals are very welcome to participate in the challenge. But if you want to make your team bigger, if you want to merge efforts, just write in the forum with the find teams tag. Yes, can members join a subscribed team at any time? Indeed, you can. So the team leader will register the team. He can eventually register the team with only him in it, and then he can add members. He can withdraw members as the competition is going on. So the members can really change over time, and anyone can be added at any time in the team. Same goes for the model. You can register with one model, but then you can add others. You can withdraw your model eventually. So it's very flexible in terms of teams and models. Just for models, we ask you to use the same model throughout one period, but then in between periods, you can change your model, participate with a new model, etc. Then John is asking, there are no restrictions on computational infrastructure, use and coding architecture, right?
Correct. There is no restrictions on computational infrastructure and your coding.
And Lawrence, is the RPS from the 1.5 Lapland grid area weighted?
Yes, it is area weighted. Just to highlight that for near surface temperature and precipitation, we only focus on grid points that have at least 80% land coverage. And you can retrieve the land sea mask using the AI WeatherQuest Python package. Meanwhile, for mean sea level pressure, we'll be using all grid points, including that over the ocean.
Could you provide the link for the forum where we can look for team members in case they are needed? So, of course, I will provide you with the link right now. You will see a first post on the forum from myself called instructions. So don't hesitate to start with this post to see the different tags that you can use in the forum, and notably the find teams tag that you can use if you want to find teammates. So I'm posting the link to the forum right now. Then we have Diego Fernando asking if we want to calibrate the outputs from the ECMWF S2S project, and I understand there's delay in the information. How can we obtain the data needed to generate the predictions?
Well, maybe I can answer this one. Well, the ECMWF, the data from the ECMWF S2S project is now available with a 2-day delay. I don't know if you want to use all models or just the ECMWF models, but most models from the S2S database are now available with a 2-day delay. So since you have a 4-day window to produce your forecast, you should have time to use this data.
Can we use any kind of AI model?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you can use any kind of AI model for the competition. We just request that you provide a written summary of what that model looks like, so that we can begin to start collaborating between different models and different groups. Okay, John. So is it okay to use data available after the submission date, as long as it refers to the period before the submission? Yes, that's absolutely fine. So, for example, you may choose to use dynamical subseasonal forecasts that initialized on the Thursday, but you only retrieve them on the Saturday. You are very welcome to post-process that dynamical forecast information and submit your machine learning AI forecast. But make sure that you only use forecast initializations that are before or on Thursday at midnight, Thursday 0 UTC.
Just to be sure, you will make available the verification package that you will use for the leaderboard.
Correct. So you can compute the rank probability skill score using the Python package that I mentioned earlier. So the same Python package that's used for forecast submission and to retrieve the training data. The code is open for anyone to see. At the moment, that code can compute the latest rank probability skill scores. I'm still yet to develop the code that will compute the accumulated ranked probability skill scores, as this involves retrieving the previous forecasts that you've given in previous weeks. So it's slightly more complicated, but that should be made available before the competitive period.
If the contest organizers won't see the code, how will you know the submissions aren't using data after the submission date, both intentionally and unintentionally?
We won't. If the is the honest answer, we are only retrieving the quintile probabilities, and that's a risk that we're taking as a competition. We're trying to, I think in the terms and conditions, you agreed that, you'll only use information that's before the forecast initialization date. And if we figure out that anybody's using information post that Thursday's initialization, they'll be removed from the competition. Correct. And yes, I can share the Python package.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Olga.
Again, do not hesitate if any questions come up in the future. The forum and the contact us form, both channels we will use for these. So I propose we go to the closing slide then. First of all, a big thank you, of course, to everyone involved in the organization of the quest, including the advisory board members, and a big thank you to you, the participants. We're very, very excited to see what you submit and your participation in the AI Weather Quest. We will see you for the next webinar. So I remind you of the date here. It will take place. So actually, it's not May 2nd. Sorry, I have to correct that. It's May 7th. I have already shared with you the registration pages. You will find them in the chat, so don't hesitate to register as soon as today, and you will see this registration page linked from the website as soon as tomorrow. Thank you very much, and see you all on the 7th of May.